Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. My name is Jania. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with y'all something that has been sticking out to me in scripture. I'm going to be coming from 1 Samuel. In 1 Samuel, Saul is king over Israel. Samuel is the one who God chooses to anoint Saul to allow him to be king. So everything is going great until it's not. Samuel gives Saul an instruction from the Lord to go destroy the Amalekite nation, all of the people, as well as all the livestock. What Saul does is he destroys the men, the women, the children, but he does not kill all the livestock, and he keeps King Agag, who is the king of the Amalekites, alive. So in that, Saul completely disregarded the instruction of the Lord because he just halfway did what God said to do. And when I tell y'all, it gets crazy from here. It gets crazy. So Samuel ends up finding that, Saul has disobeyed the orders of God. And Samuel is like, God is not pleased with you, Saul, and you're not going to be king no more. While Saul is holding on to Samuel, he tears a piece of his robe. And Samuel is like, today the Lord has torn the kingdom away from you. He also says, and he's given it to someone else who is better than you. That is where David makes his entrance into 1 Samuel. So Saul, he's no longer going to be king, and God told Samuel to go anoint David. What ends up happening from there is God doesn't just take Saul from being king. He also sends and puts a tormenting spirit on Saul. So Saul was tormented, and it just so happens that the only person that could soothe that tormenting spirit was David. David would play the harp, and he would be like, Saul would be chill after David played the harp. It also later comes that David fights Goliath, and we all know that story. David ends up slaying Goliath because he said, you came with a spear and a javelin, but I came in the name of the Lord. That's just so good. So David kills Goliath, and then after that, David becomes like instant besties with Saul's son, Jonathan. And then it was saying like Saul didn't let David go back home to his father. Pretty much David had stayed in the house of Saul at that point. So it was one day where David and Saul had got back from fighting, right, with the Israelites. And this is where the rubber meets the road. As they're coming in, there are these ladies singing, Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. And that set Saul off. Mind you, God had already said through Samuel that Saul was not going to be king anymore, right? So Saul had that knowledge, he had that encounter, and he knew that he was not going to be king forever because God had torn the kingdom away from him and given it to somebody better than him. He just didn't know at the time that that was going to be David. And when Saul had got the news, Samuel hadn't went to go anoint David yet, but afterwards, then this happens. It said in verse 8 that this made Saul very angry. And he was pretty much saying, why are they crediting him like tens of thousands and just me, my thousands? He also says next they would try to make him king. So Saul knew not only that his time was up, but he's pretty much seeing the other king who is better than him essentially be ushered in. In verse 9, it says, from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. So now we know that Saul is no longer going to be king, that God is going to give the kingdom to somebody better than Saul. David has already been anointed to be the next king, and now Saul is coming to the realization of that. But because of Saul's sin, he now is jealous. This sends Saul down a rabbit hole of just doing the most. So from then on, Saul not only tries to have David killed, he also hurls spears at him, meaning like trying to kill him himself. And then he goes on a conquest to try to find David as David is trying to escape from Saul, because at this point, David has done nothing wrong to Saul. He's been like a loyal, faithful servant, but Saul was jealous. So he had no valid reason to not want David to be king. The reason that David was going to be king is because Saul disobeyed God. In chapter 24, the subtitle says that David spared Saul's life. So like I told you guys, David was on the run from Saul, but on this particular occasion, Saul went out with his men to try to find David, right? But Saul does not know that David and his men are hiding in a specific cave. And what Saul does is he goes into that cave not knowing David and his men are way in the back of that cave, and he relieves himself. And I feel like there's just so much God was like allowing me to glean from that. Saul is going into the cave to relieve himself, right? When you go to the bathroom, you are in a vulnerable, guard down situation. When you go to the bathroom, you don't assume someone is going to attack you. You don't assume that danger is near. You're simply like giving your body the release to release to release the stuff, to go to the bathroom, to release the toxins. So you're not thinking, like I said, any harm is going to come to you. You're simply allowing your body to relieve itself. But while you're allowing your body to relieve itself, you also are in like a chill state. Saul is in a completely vulnerable spot. His guard is down. He's using the bathroom. David could have came from behind him. They could have amped, like they could have did so many things to Saul, right? So while Saul is relieving himself, David and his men are in the back of the cave. And it's crazy because David's men are saying, like, surely today the Lord has given Saul into your hands. Like, seize the opportunity, take it, take his life, and we'll be done. They probably were thinking we won't have to be on the run no more. Because David, y'all, was on the run from Saul chapter after chapter after chapter. They were just advising him from their wisdom and their knowledge. And they were like, basically, take him out. It's crazy because Saul was in such a vulnerable spot, not only because he was going to the bathroom, but he was in the territory of his enemy. And David didn't make himself an enemy to Saul. Saul made himself an enemy to David. David goes forward and he cuts off a piece of Saul's robe. And he says, like, surely the Lord knows I shouldn't have done that. Like, his conscience started bothering him. And that just goes to show the character that God put inside of David. Even him just cutting off the robe, he was like, and this is a man that's trying to kill him. Anybody else would have been like, dude, you literally just cut off a piece of his robe. Like, it's fine. But David answered to God, and he felt like what he did was wrong. So he confessed that. So not only in that moment did David not do anything further, he didn't himself kill Saul, and he also would not let his men kill Saul. So, mind you, Saul is going to the bathroom amongst all these things happening. I'm like, how do you not feel somebody cutting a piece of your robe off? Like, you had to really be chilling going to the bathroom to not be able to hear none of this stuff that was happening, or they were just that quiet. David had the perfect opportunity to seize the moment and to take Saul out, but he chose to cover him. Even though Saul uncovered himself going to the bathroom, David chose to cover him back up by sparing his life. So Saul leaves the cave, and then David also leaves the cave sometime after. And David is saying, like, why are you trying to kill me? Like, what is it about me that you're trying to kill me? So the thing is, David, like I told y'all a couple verses before, cuts off a piece of Saul's robe. And what I love about David is the heart that he has for God and the character that he has. But he's also like, I'm not stupid. I could have had you. I could have killed you. And this is evidence. I'm showing you the robe that I cut, the piece of the robe that I cut. I could have just straight killed you. And that would have been the end of it. But David was saying, like, from evil people come evil deeds. David wasn't willing to compromise his character. He was still covering Saul. And I don't think that is something that I really recognized before, because it's just like, oh, David is showing like grace and mercy, but he's literally choosing to cover Saul. Even though God was not with Saul anymore, because God at a point was with Saul, David honored and respected the calling that was on his life, even if Saul wasn't living up to the calling how he should. And I feel like that is just such a humbling example to see. But even when people are trying to assassinate your character, to accuse you unjustly, like choosing to extend grace and mercy to those people and choosing to let the Lord fight for you. Because the thing is, Saul ends up getting what is coming to him. It just wasn't at the hands of David. David lets God fight his battles. I don't think David had it easy at all. He was having to run and be in uncomfortable situations, and not because of anything that he had done to Saul, but because Saul, his anger and his jealousy was chasing after David. But just as hard as that was chasing after David, David kept choosing to cover, kept choosing to honor, kept choosing to love, kept choosing to respect. And I'm just like, had it been me, I don't know if I would have been able to do that same thing. We see his example and we're able to be like, man, there is somebody who, did me dirty, or just left me out to dry, or was hunting me down when I did nothing to them. But in those moments, am I choosing to cover them? Not in a way that I'm not acknowledging what they did, because David did acknowledge that he was on the run from Saul, and Saul was accusing him unjustly of something he didn't even do. And it was really nothing that Saul was accusing him of. He just didn't want him to be king. But in those moments when we're faced with those things, it's like, God, am I really choosing to cover and love and respect this person? Do I agree with what they're doing? No. Do I think they are unjustly accusing me? Yes. Do I think they're hunting me down without cause? Yes. But am I choosing to follow the example that we see through David and to let it be known that I'm not stupid. I know what you're trying to do, but because I know the Lord fights for me, I don't even have to try to get vengeance on my own. Like, justice comes from the Lord. It just challenges me to want to be like, well, maybe there's not somebody out trying to kill me right now. Well, the enemy does come to still kill and destroy. But there may not be a specific person who is like trying to, you know, take me out the way that Saul was trying to take David out. But the people who are against me, am I still choosing to cover those people? Am I still choosing to love them even in spite of the things that they're doing against me? Am I choosing to pray for them? Because let's talk about it. That is really hard. Praying for somebody who you know whose heart is turned against you for no fair reason, and it just seems like unfair the way that they are treating you. But am I choosing to see the moment where they're in that cave? Am I choosing to see that moment and to give God the space to fight for me, or am I gonna let my flesh do it? Because if I let my flesh do it, I'm gonna give that person what I think they deserve back. So it's through knowing who Christ is that you're able to cover people who hate you, that you're able to love people who don't like you. It's literally only through the power of the Holy Spirit that you can do that. So looking at this story, I'm like, man, we see so many things in David's story, how he killed Goliath, and we could stay on that. How him and Jonathan's friendship was super tight. We could stay on that. And those things are amazing. And I feel like you can grab something from each one of the stories that we see throughout David's life. But it was just really like, wow, David chose to cover somebody and to honor somebody who was trying to dishonor him, who was trying to kill him. It really did challenge me, like, man, in those times that people were uncovering and dishonoring me, what was my response? Was my response the response of Christ? And through David, we see an example of how Christ wants us to be, to cover those people. Really thinking back on those times, like, man, have I chosen to cover someone who I felt was unworthy of being covered? Because that's me to God. I don't deserve to be covered by God. I don't deserve to be forgiven by God. God chooses to cover me time and time again. And if God is covering me, I have to be able to extend that to people who I don't feel deserve it, because I don't deserve it. Y'all have any comments, please leave them down below. If you've read 1 Samuel before and you got different nuggets from this portion of the book, please be sure to leave that down below. If you pretty much took the same thing away that I did, leave that down below as well. I would love to chat with y'all about this book. It's amazing. I will see you guys in my next video. Thank y'all so much for watching.
Don't believe in failures in my life, it's only lessons. They just making room for what I'm on now.